poem, Elsa Brooks, in honor of the day. It's called A Father and a Daughter. She wakes up to the sound of crying, muffled in the darkness. She takes tentative steps to the room upstairs. It's her father. Bottles on the floor, cigarette in hand. The room is subdued, smoky. She turns to leave as silently as she walked in. He whispers, "I'm sorry." Tears flow freely, streaking her cheeks. She runs to hug him. 4 years later, and they are still hugging. They still cry together, but now they can also laugh together, take trips together, play cards together, friends as well as family. They live in a small brown house. It was so cold, so empty. She still cries on her own. So does he. He has a son who can't be with him, who feels guilty for loving him, a wife that despises him, but a daughter who can't live without him. He's her rock, her savior, her knight in shining armor. She is the light of his life, the apple of his eye, his second chance, his path to redemption. On the one hand, what are we? Stardust. Right? We come out of nowhere and then we disappear back into nowhere. 14.3 billion years or something like that since this universe started doing its thing. And our lives are so short. I was at a wedding last night watching the little kids dancing. Oh my, there's one little girl, I don't know, 4 years old, 5, dancing with abandon. I thought, what a remarkable thing. And then I was remembering my own kids at 35 and 31 years ago being just the same. And here they are. So, on the one hand, stardust and sort of, in a certain way, inconsequential and empty. And how extraordinary it is that our practice facilitates, prepares us for, cultivates the ground for experiencing ourselves as stardust. What a relief that is to realize, oh, everything's really okay. Because there's nothing to hold on to. Even this hard-won self that we work so hard to generate and then heal. What a relief to have one toe in that reality. Even a glimpse of that. And then over here, there's this self. This self with its incredible gifts and strengths and woundedness and its stories of a past and hopes for a future and fears for a future and interruption from the right hemisphere. How many of you have seen Wonder Woman? Oh my goodness. Great movie. Great movie. this won't ruin it for you, but love wins. Love wins against all obstacles. And that's true over here, that by learning to love ourselves and each other, we actually learn to live more happily and to live more kindly and to be more generous and love and compassion. And we don't come by love and compassion by accident, or maybe we do to some degree, but we can if we discover a spiritual undertaking, a path. We can really grow our love and our compassion and our wisdom and our kindness, and we really can become noble beings, beings who are more capable of caring for each other. So I want to talk today a little bit, and then maybe open the mic up. I'd like to speak about those beings who in this lifetime have played the role of father. Right? We tend to say, my father, when in fact, my father was a really ordinary human being who was pretty deeply wounded, who did a pretty remarkable job of playing that role, especially given everything. My particular father, Earl Robert Beattie, was born in Trenton, Ontario. I forget what year, 20 maybe. He'd passed away 22 years ago. Depression. He came of age in the Depression, and he couldn't leave home because there was no work. And so he delivered papers and gave all his money to the family and lived at home. And then he got an invitation somehow to move to Montreal, where I grew up. And there he went from being a truck driver for a company that distributed paperbacks and magazines, and our family got in deep doo-doo with the Catholic Women's League because he also distributed Playboy and Batman. And the worst of the two was the Batman. Yeah, because the dark side. But before he moved to Montreal, he met my mother in a little town called Timmins, Ontario. He went to Montreal for some months before she came with my eldest sister. So he's a person who had very humble beginnings and who ultimately became the general manager of that company that he worked for with 80 trucks. He introduced the first computers into that business. Huge, humongous things. I remember going to see them. Cards. To the best of my knowledge, I think he was rather significantly physically abused by his father, who was a railroad telegrapher and lineman. He never hit me. He never hit any of us. I criticized him mightily because he would get really angry and go downstairs, and he had a circular saw, which he taught me to use. My carpentry skills are all from him, and skiing. But he would go down and saw up old wood, old pallets, shipping pallets, and he would throw them. And I was talking with my therapist very critically of him one time about how he used to do this, and he would terrorize the house with his anger. And he said, "And did he hit anybody?" Maybe he found a great way of sublimating that rage. Pretty interesting. He got it together financially to move to the suburbs of Montreal. We lived in an okay neighborhood, but The research has shown that the peer group is as important as the family in terms of one's lifetime trajectory. And he moved us to a house, $14,000 they paid for the house in Lachine, Western Montreal. Got us a house, and it was a very nice neighborhood. I lived on my bicycle. It was a terrific place. And then there was, of course, as I say of my mother, she planned, purchased, and created something like 15,000 meals for me. That's aside from diapers and while he wasn't doing childcare, he was supporting all that. Pretty impressive. As a parent, I have a little sense of how much giving one does. I remember seeing parents buying food for their children in restaurants and thinking, oh man, that must be hard. Phew. What a privilege to have enough money to buy food for your children. What an incredible blessing to do that. So, he also was a victim of the scourge of alcohol. And his life was very deeply affected by that. He died. He was a maintenance drinker at the end and never managed to stop. That was expensive for him and for us, very difficult. A few things he said. He was a man of few words. Among them, one time he said, in a very difficult moment, he said, "Robert, we do the best we are." That's a wise statement, huh? And there was the one time they came to Portland when my son Luke was 6 months old, we took him out to dinner. And I asked at dinner, if you were to, I'd bless me with your wisdom. What would you say? What advice would you give me now that I'm a new father? And he thought for a little while, and then he said, try not to hurt anybody, and don't cheat any more than you have to. Phew. And one other encounter, it was the same time. I so wanted his approval. He didn't have much approval from his father, and it wasn't part of that generation to be approving. I learned from one of his close friends, after he died, the friend at the memorial service, the friend came and said, "We tried to get him to back off on you. We tried to get him to see that you were following a different poetry, that you were following a different drummer." But he had difficulty giving direct praise. But when I asked him, I'd like your blessing on my work. And he said, hell, Robert. You can't expect me to understand that psychology stuff. But you're making a living, and I don't think you're hurting anybody. That's pretty nice, huh? So, he lived long enough that I came to not hold much grudge against him. At the end, 2 weeks before he died, we moved, he and my mother, across the country. We had 9 seats on the plane so that she could have she had a stroke, she could have her, a stretcher on the seats by the window. And my dad could be there. And we came across the country, and he died very soon thereafter. And on the top of his papers, which he'd gotten fairly much in order, was a well-worn, he'd had emphysema, very severe emphysema. And he cared for my mother for a whole year. She was in the hospital. He'd go to visit twice a day or 3 times a day. Let's see if I can remember this. The difference between an ordinary man and a great man is persistence. I think it was persistence. Pew. So he got her, one could say, he got her into the safety of an apartment in the same city as my sister, and with care people and so on, and then he was out of there. So, fathers, I think it's really important that we remember that fathers, our father, was an ordinary, is maybe. How many of you have your father still alive? Oh, how nice. Yay. How many's father has been gone more than 10 years? More than 20? Yeah. How many have both parents gone? It's interesting, isn't it, how it changes things? One realizes it's in a way it's silly. I had the experience that there's no one between me and the edge. Of course, there never was, but. So here's a little piece from Kathy Kelly in the Sun magazine, February 2005. My father was the second oldest of 7 children. His mother died of a brain tumor when he was 17. His father, a violent alcoholic who had beaten his wife, promptly abandoned the children. The younger ones were placed in foster care or in a Catholic home for working boys. My dad kept track of them all, hoping to bring them together under one roof someday. He never succeeded. My grandfather held an inexplicable grudge against my father. He would mail Dad postcards from seaports around the world that read, "Dear Jim, I'm alive, no thanks to you." Toward the end of his life, my grandfather lived on the street in New York City. My dad paid the owner of a flop house my grandfather frequented to make sure his father always had a meal and a bed. My grandfather died in that flop house of tuberculosis sometime in the 30s. My father did not tell me these stories until I had kids of my own. By then I was mad at my dad because his own drinking had made our home a scary place for me as a child. I was mad at my mom because she'd been so passive, hardly ever getting out of bed. I was mad at my brother for leaving home and never looking back. I was mad at my sister for being everyone's favorite. I felt the world owed me one big apology. My mom had plenty of time to apologize as she lay dying, but she didn't. My dad didn't apologize for his drinking, but he did get sober. That was apology enough for me. It was a pleasure to listen to him hum a tune as he stood on a ladder in my house making electrical repairs for me and the kids. I'm older now, and I have learned what a mistake it is to wait around for people to apologize. A wise person once said that holding on to anger is like eating rat poison and expecting the rat to die. No longer do I look down on people who offend me, extending forgiveness from my lofty perch. I understand now how limited we all are by circumstances, time, place, history, and luck. We humans are a frail lot. Compassion seems to be the only thing that saves us. I am older now and have learned what a mistake it is to wait around for people to apologize. A wise person once said that holding on to anger is like eating rat poison and expecting the rat to die. The Buddha said that holding on to resentment is like taking a burning coal from the fire and holding it tightly in our hand. No longer do I look down on people who offend me, extending forgiveness from my lofty perch. I understand now how limited we all are by circumstances, time, place, history, and luck. We humans are a frail lot. Compassion seems to be the only thing that saves us. Stardust, self. What if it's really true that all that exists is right now? And that one thing that does, it makes the story that we have of, quote, my childhood, what it is, which is a story. A potent story, but it really is over. And it's becoming clear to me, it's been clear for a long time actually, my dad really is gone, never to be seen again. He persisted as attitudes, and it still does, I'm sure, in me, I know, but as attitudes and memories, and there was some significant resentment for some time. And that resentment required pretty skillful help on the part of a therapist or two, and my own meditation, watching the story and watching the emotions and grieving the losses. And in time, we become more and more free, realizing, oh, that all happened, sort of. There's pictures. Though I must say, I'm so not interested in the stories or the pictures anymore. If I could do my children's childhood again, I would take 1/20th the photos. What a waste of time and energy. Boxes of these paper pictures. And digitally, it fills up the computer. All those times I was behind this stupid camera, I could have been just there, being present. I'm doing much better with my grandson. So, I invite you to think about the story of your father. Do you have a grudge? Are there things you haven't, quote, forgiven him for? How long are you going to wait? Are you waiting for him to say he's sorry? Now, caveat, sometimes things happen which make it impossible to be in relationship with a person, and we have to pull down the shutters, and it's like, I will not see this person again. But we don't have to pull down the shutters in our heart. And that potentiality arises through compassion. In my own case, which I think is pretty typical, it's been so helpful to not live up to my moral and ethical ideals, to fall on my face rather fully, to do some things that hurt people a lot. And then to realize, I really am an ordinary human being who's working my way out of unconsciousness and embracing my shadow. And so was that man that I call my father. With his deck that he was dealt and his time. My dad was saved from World War II, being Canadian, right? The Canadians entered the war really early. And he was devastated. He couldn't go because he had an ulcer on his eye. And he was accosted by the police many, many times, apparently, he said, during the first 2 or 3 years before the United States entered the war, 2 years. Because here he was, a young man of obviously war-fighting age, still in Montreal. But he had shame about having not gone, interestingly. I'm glad he didn't go. So, I probably wouldn't be here, actually. So this person that in this lifetime you call your father, is there a resentment knot? And if there is, it's really time to honor it, not to banish it, but to notice it and to notice how it holds something tight. And I invite you to join me in just a little guided meditation with this. If you turn the mind toward this person who in this lifetime played the role of father, is it with affection, aversion, neutrality? And if there's particularly if there's an aversion story, it's called a grievance story by, what's his name, the fellow who wrote Forgive for Good. Fred Luskin, yeah, great book, Forgive for Good. If there's a grievance story, notice, you've told that story to yourself a lot of times, and you've probably shared it with others. And so let yourself feel it. And notice how much discomfort there is. Any resentment we hold is a constriction in consciousness and body. And tell yourself the outlines of the story. He did this, he did that. He didn't do this, And then take a moment to remember the realities of your father's life. What was the context of his birth? Did he grow up in a family and a circumstance that was unconditionally loving and supportive and full of blessings? Or was his life a mixed bag too? And we're just kind of cracking the window open on this here this morning. If this attracts you, you can do much more and go much deeper. But remembering, this is the frame that's so helpful. It's the stardust frame. That this, quote, person was actually the universe posing as a human being who in this lifetime played the role of father. And remembering, if you need to keep your boundaries clear and solid, and this isn't about forgiving and forgetting, that would be madness. It's about forgiving and remembering. It's about putting down our end of the rope of tension. And you might try some word experiments. Maybe have a conversation with this imagination that is in your mind of Father. You can imagine having a conversation with this, quote, Father figure, where he's developed the world's best communication skills, where he can be really empathic, where he can, in your own heart-mind, say those things you've always longed to hear. What have you always wanted to hear from your Father? And notice any doubt or dismissing. There could be fear too. This could be really hard to do. So we only do as much as we can in any given moment. And then if the words make sense and are safe, you might say something like, I forgive you. I know you did the best you were. But I want to set myself free. I want this energy back that I use holding this resentment. And let your breathing be full. And those words, I forgive you, as much as I can in this moment. I set you free. And then sometimes it's useful to go the other way. Recognize I too have had my oar in the water and have been less than loving sometimes. Please forgive me. And then there's that all essential forgiving of oneself. No longer do I look down on people who offend me, extending forgiveness from my lofty perch. I understand now how limited we all are by circumstances, time, place, history, and luck. We humans, including this one that I call myself, we humans are a frail lot. Compassion seems to be the only thing that saves us. Have mercy on yourself. Yourself is, of course, stardust. It's also a one-of-a-kind, absolutely precious incarnation, which is making its way through a lifetime and waking up. And so this is just the suggestion of how we might turn toward this apparition, this memory, this fantasy of a history of a past, and letting it end, letting it inform our compassion heart. And your intuition, or perhaps your dreams tonight or tomorrow night or next week sometime, your intuition can help you with this process of relinquishing resentment and becoming more loving and compassionate toward this person who in this lifetime played the role of father. So don't be stuck with these words. Maybe it's a song that you hear or know or love, or maybe it's a phone call or an email. Maybe it's just a mysterious turning in your own heart, which is accompanied by relaxation and ease, and the recognition that we all always do the best we are. This is a poem by Wendell Berry. At my age, my father held me on his arm like a hooded bird. And his father held him so. Now I grow into brotherhood with my father, as he with his has grown. Time teaching me his thoughts in my own. Now he speaks in me as when I knew him first, as his father spoke in him when he had come to thirst for the life of a young son. My son will know me in himself, when his son sits hooded on his arm, and I have grown to be brother to all my fathers. Memory speaking to knowledge, finally, in my bones. At my age, my father held me on his arm like a hooded bird, and his father held him so. Now, I grow into brotherhood with my father as he has grown, time teaching me his thoughts in my own. Now he speaks in me as when I knew him first, as his father spoke in him when he had come to thirst for the life of a young son. My son will know me in himself when his son sits hooded on his arm, and I have grown to be brother to all my fathers. Memory speaking to knowledge, finally in my bones. Well, thank you, my friends, for your kind presence and attention. How fortunate we are in our refuge spot and with these absolutely priceless teachings that can not just help us with stress management and psychological well-being, but actually transform our lives. Transform our lives so that we then become very active agents of love and compassion in this world that sure seems to need us. So have a lovely day. Happy Father's Day to the fathers in the room, and I will be gone for quite some time. I'm very grateful to Gregory and Jim and the others and Kate who will take the helm. I'll be checking in. I'll be watching. That'll be fun. You better be good. So, thank you all so much. And we're going to now make a big circle, and then there'll be a little circle in the middle for the kids. And any grown-up who would like to revert to your child nature, come and be in the middle.
Are those our roses? From the rose bush out there?
Hi, Claudia.
Okay, well, why don't you sit by Willow? Willow, can you join us so that you guys can see together?
Hi. Hi, Tara. Well, look at you guys. Who's this? Puppy? Yes, I see. Will the puppy behave while we're doing this? Do you think he'd be quiet? Okay.
It's just a stuffy.
It's a stuffy, really? Oh, how do you know?
Because I can't hear doggy roughing.
You can't hear doggy breathing. Oh, that's roofing.
From there you go.
I get it. Okay. What if I barked? Ruff, ruff. Watch, I'm a ventriloquist. Watch this. Watch the doggy. Ruff, 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 ruff. All right. Can I hold your hand? Can I hold your hand? I would like to welcome Eric here, and the teacher of our children's community role. Thank you for being here. So let's feel these hands, one of a kind ever in the universe. Feel that one on your left, the one that's in your left hand, and give it a little squeeze. Could be any hand on the planet, couldn't it? So why not love that hand? Why not wish her or him your highest wish? And the right hand, similarly held. It's remarkable how much we can convey in just a little tiny squeeze, isn't it? It's like, I know you're there. I'm here. Wishing her or him your highest wish. And then to everyone in this circle, these circles, and everyone who's ever been in this room since 1930, all the people in the houses around us, and our circles go out and out like a great ripple from a stone thrown into a pool, across continents, America, Europe, South America, the Middle East, Asia, South Asia, the Antarctic, the Arctic, Australia, everywhere. There's life all over this planet. Wishing all beings to remember, may we all remember that we're stardust. And may we all therefore learn to love each other completely, fully, beautifully. Let us include our brothers and sisters of the air, the earth, and the waters. We're all part of one living dance. And so we have the ancient ritual of blowing out the candle. Everyone in the room gets to take a big deep breath. Oh, first we have the song. I forgot. Who's singing? You girls? Okay. You want to come together? Oh, the dog. All right, here. I'll hold the dog. Ruff, 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 ruff. And let me see if this is on. No. Yes, it is. Okay, go.
May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Wow. The dog stayed quiet. Very good. Good dog. All right. So everyone in the room, take a nice big deep breath. And then when I do the count, the usual count, 1, 2, 3, blow. Yes! We did it. Thank you, dear friends. And please do come and have some goodies. And thank you to those of you that joined us on the net today. You are? Great.
Have you went snorkeling?
Have I gone snorkeling in Thailand? Let me think.